back there, you get to the beginning of the soft palate, right? And that's the part of the palate that allows us, move back to that, right? There's the hard palate, right? That's the maxilla bone and the palatine bone. And this helps to keep the stuff from going back up into your nasal pharynx so you don't end up breathing rice grains or getting milk to pass through your nose. That's a part of the purpose of it, is to keep stuff from going out the nasal cavity. Well, the epithelium found there is two kinds, right? On the hard palate is stratified squamous. It's been keratinized. But the soft palate doesn't have to be keratinized because you're already in the chewing. So it should be a lot softer. So I can afford to have just stratified squamous in that part of the back of my mouth. What's the function of the oral cavity? Three things. One is what's called mechanical digestion. And we're going to have two types of digestion. One's mechanical and one's chemical. Mechanical is the literal chewing, the gnashing, the gnawing, the crunching of food with your mechanical teeth. It makes them smaller pieces. And then we're going to have the start of chemical digestion, like the saliva in your mouth has chemicals in it. That helps us to break down the carbohydrates, which we'll address more next week. But that's the first two functions of your mouth. Mechanical digestion due to chewing, right? And your tongue pushing food against the top of your mouth. And then the chemical, which will come from the salivary glands in our mouth. And then finally, the idea of lubrication due to the salivary glands, to make it so the food can literally slide down your esophagus. Now here's how you can see how important this bottom part is. After you guys have had a few drinks with your friends, maybe on their fourth or their fifth or their sixth drink, ask them to do a challenge. Tell them they have to buy drinks if they cannot swallow, chew and swallow 6 saltine crackers in 1 minute without drinking anything while they do it. They're not going to be able to. All right? 6 saltine crackers at once are going to be so dry that it soaks up all the saliva in your mouth. And it's going to be damn near impossible to swallow. It's going to be stuck through your mouth like dogs with peanut butter, right? Which is kind of fun to watch. But they're not going to be able to swallow it. And then you get drinks for free because they lost the bet. But that's how important this is. Okay? The reason I pointed it out is people who go through radiation therapy, right, from the clavicle on up, they get irradiated a lot. Like a friend who's staying with me right now, she has no salivary glands. She has to use synthetic saliva, which tastes like crap and doesn't work very well. So she's constantly with a water bottle, a little sip, a little bit of food, little sip, a little bit of food. But because of the chemo, her soft palate is also retracted. So for example, last night when she came in from shopping, she was walking into the kitchen, and where am I going? Where am I going? Wrong way. I need to go this way. She was walking in, taking a sip of her latte, and the latte came here, and then went right up this way, and right back out her nose. And she literally just poured 2 tablespoons of latte out of the front of her nose. Which is why we want to have a nice, happy, fully functional, soft palate. That's why we want to have nice, functional lubrication glands so you can actually swallow the food. And radiation destroys that quite easily, unfortunately. This you guys already know. This is a repeat. This is respiration. There's nothing new on here. So just practice what you do know. There's nothing new to add to this. You already know about our tonsils. Right, that act as places of immune tissue. So as food comes in, I have my immune system right there ready to target it. Right, think about little kids. Everything goes in the mouth, right, for little kiddos, because they have to sample everything. Let's talk about those salivary glands. First, learn the names of the 3. All right? Then go back and learn where they are. You have the parotid, sublingual. Think about what the word sublingual means, probably below the tongue. And then submandibular, probably below the mandible. All right, now I got to just find the damn things. You have 2 really good models that will help you do it. It's the skulls that belong to the top of our really expensive torso models. Our little headless dude over here. That's what these things are trying to show you. These guys, and then this thing. This is your parotid salivary gland. And there's a diagram on the next slide to show you these. How many of you ever eaten really sour candies and it makes this part of your jaw kind of contract? You have this little cramp going on in your jaw. That's because the gland is contracting. You're actually feeling the muscles contract the saliva to try and get it into your mouth. Now the cool thing is, this isn't in your mouth. It's right out here. So how does the saliva out here actually end up inside of your mouth, in here? Well, there's a duct called the parotid duct that empties out right behind your second molar, inside of your mouth. And the diagram on the next slide will kind of help you to see that, although they put the pointer in the wrong spot. So here's the first diagram that shows us, right, where we are anatomically. There's the outside parotid. There's the duct passing over the masseter muscle. If that sounds familiar, right? And it's going to end up right there, right? Opening of parotid duct. It's right behind the second molar, inside of your mouth. So I can then help lubricate the food as you're chewing on it. The next one is the sublingual, because it's below the tongue. It has multiple ducts. And to me, it reminds me of an engine manifold or a motorcycle. Right? I can see all the exhaust pipes. So there isn't just a single one. There's actually several, but they're under the lining of the edge of your tongue. You can't see them, but they're there. They're little teeny openings. And the saliva just comes out to help lubricate your tongue and lubricate the food that you're eating. Now, they also contain a little bit of a buffer to help keep things from getting too acidic. A little bit of an alkaline solution. And then you have the really important one that makes the majority of your saliva. That's the submandibulars, right? Below the mandible. Now, they produce mucin, which is mucus. The same stuff when you blow your nose. It's just a little more watered down version of it. That's nice and slimy. But there are two actual ducts to this gland. And if we go to the next slide, not this one, this shows you the side view, but let's go look straight on into someone's mouth. And you can kind of guess where the parotid would be, somewhere back in here. But look at the base of someone's tongue, where that fold of skin is, and there are two little dots at the very base of it, of your tongue, and those are the openings of the submandibular saliva gland, or salivary gland. Now there's a little bit of either a gross or kind of a cool bit of factoid. One of your classmates, Kyle, who sits right there in first lab, has a talent that a lot of folks happen to have. They can actually contract the saliva gland and squirt out saliva like a cobra. Kyle apparently can squirt from there to this thing. All right? It might be nasty. There's a lot of YouTube videos, but some people, but that's how much saliva comes out of this thing. It's there mainly, remember, to lubricate the food and provide some chemical digestion. But there are a few folks, they don't even know that they do it. And so you say, quit spinning when you talk. They don't realize they're actually contracting the salivary gland and accidentally just squirting saliva out. You have to learn, oh, I got to kind of keep my tongue down a little bit. But things like have a lift until they learn how to control the muscles. But some folks can actually squirt it over a couple of feet, apparently.
So those aren't smooth muscles, so you can learn how to control it?
Well, I can control my tongue, but that has to be skeletal muscles. All right? The muscles along the duct would be smooth, yes. But I can still control the tissue around the duct. So it's sort of like saying, if you have a full bladder and I push on your bladder, right? You need to learn to contract the abdominal muscles, so when I push, nothing happens. That kind of a context. All right. For those of you going into dental hygiene, I apologize for the crash course in teeth you're about to get. It is not much. It doesn't do you justice whatsoever. But 3 major parts to a tooth: the crown, the neck, and the root. Okay, I got that. The crown is made of enamel. That's the part that you see, the pearly whites of someone's tooth. If you remove that, which remember, that's the hardest substance in our body. It's harder than concrete. But right under it is a layer of tissue called the dentin, which is very much like spongy bone. It's still rather durable, but not nearly as hard as the enamel. Now, the cells that used to make the enamel used to live in the dentin, sort of like the idea of osteoblasts, to make bone tissue. And there's some new technology. I remember coming across a paper about a year ago that some molecular biologists think they found a way to reactivate those cells So they reproduce more enamel, which means maybe, possibly in the next 10, 20 years, no more caries, no more cavities. We'll make the cells just fill in the hole. Now, I'm not a parent, I'm sure how happy dentists are going to be about that idea, because they make a nice living by filling those things in. But that's where technology is taking us, finding a way to reactivate those cells so they can start making more enamel. So the crown is covered by enamel. Under that is a layer of spongy bone-like material called dentin. And then under that's the pulp, where all the nerve endings are. When you have a toothache, that's where the pain's coming from. Or you're heat sensitive or cold sensitive or air sensitive. You're making those nerve endings be exposed because there's no more enamel protecting them between the outside world and through the dentin. So the hot air moves through, the water, and you have all these little nerve endings coming down what's called the root of the tooth. And then if you remember the alveolar processes on the mandible and maxilla, and then you have the tooth socket, well, teeth are in a socket. But there's a lot of space in terms of molecule size between the actual edge of the root and the bone tissue of the jaw. So we fill it up with a cement-like stuff called cementum. It's biological glue. And you're just literally oozing it to glue the roots into place. But you have one more layer of protection. There are ligaments that go from the bone to the actual root itself, right? And they're known as periodontal ligaments. And there's lots of them. They're just going this way. All through here and down through here. And you may remember having experienced these. If you ever were a kid and wanted to get that tooth out, and you kind of wiggle it back and forth, you kind of feel it tearing just a little teeny bit, right? I remember as a kid feeling a little tear sensation. That's you ripping the remainder of those ligaments. Because they have to dissolve for the tooth to come out, for the adult tooth to make its way in there. So you're impatient, so you wiggle the tooth, because most of them are gone in terms of ligaments. And that last bit of tearing sensation was you ripping what few you had left. But that helps to keep your tooth in place. In terms of the types of teeth, just memorize the 4 different names. Right? We're going to have incisors. We're going to have cuspids. We're going to have bicuspids, because bi means 2. And we're going to have molars. Does anybody know the function of the incisors? Let's look at where they are first, right? They're the front set of teeth. Why do you guys have these? To cut food, right? Or to slice things off of bones. And why do we have these big, strong molars in the back? What are they for?
Grinding?
Yeah, they're your mortar and pestle. So I can slice with my front teeth and chew and grind with my back teeth. Do you guys know what hazelnuts are? You know how hard those damn things are? Right? You guys ever heard of Lucy in terms of anthropology? The very first bipedal? Her nickname was called the Nutcracker. Because her mandible was very wide. Remember the ramus of the mandible and the angle? She had a really wide ramus and a very thick mandible. So we studied her jaw structure and then had a biomechanic person analyze it. And apparently, due to the size of her mandible and how big her masseter muscles had to be, she could pop hazelnuts like you guys crack sunflower seeds. That's how strong her jaw was. That's how strong her molars were. Remember, they didn't have dentists in those days. So if you lost a tooth, you lost a way of eating or of cracking food. What I want you guys to learn from this is only what's in blue. You do not need to memorize the dates of eruptions. Those of you going in dental hygiene, you may have to. So you have at least some access to some information. All I want you to know is this. We divide them up into 4 parts called a quadrant. We have an upper and a lower jaw. You can see the actual seam that comes together. So next time, if you didn't really notice this in 241, come look at the underside of the mandible, the maxilla, and there's a suture here that goes all the way up the front. You can even see a part of it right here. And that's this line right there. Well, remember when you're developing as a fetus, here are the 2 parts of my maxilla bone. They're going to grow together, grow together, grow together, grow together. Now I have a fully formed upper jaw. But if they don't form together, what do you end up getting? A cleft palate. right? Because the bones didn't come together. And we can see that the division line is right down the middle. And God forbid you get a lower jaw cleft palate. It's even harder to work with, right? But here's the idea. Little kiddos with their baby teeth, they have 20 teeth in total, right? 5 in each quadrant. You have 4 quadrants, so 4 times 5 is 20. That's all you really need to know from this. Now, you lose all your baby teeth, you make a fortune from mom and dad. What do kids get these days for a tooth? A couple of bucks a piece? We used to get 25 cents, which was a lot of money for us back then. All right? You go to 32 teeth. It's a lot more crowded. Right? Yeah, the skull's a bit bigger, right? But that's a lot more teeth per quadrant. That's all you need to know. Do not memorize the dates of when they show up. I'm not going to ask you to name what tooth that is either. All I want you to know are the names of the 4 different kinds of teeth, the number of teeth in a child, the number of teeth in an adult, and that's it. Okay?
What's that 2, 1, 2, 3?
That's what's known as a dental formula, that when I teach this for biology majors, you learn dental formulas for different animals. And if you tell me the formula, I know what animal it is, because you're looking at 2 incisors, right? A canine, 2 premolars, and 3 molars. It's the pattern of teeth that's in the mouth of that animal. All right, the pharynx. Realize that that's this part here that we learned about for respiration, right? Nothing new here. You know the 3 parts, right? The nasal, the oral, and laryngopharyngeal region. But do keep in mind this now. It's a common pathway for both food and respiration when you come in from the mouth. So you can get both air coming in this way, but also food. So it is a common passageway right down through here. This shouldn't be common. It accidentally becomes one when you get milk going through your nose, but for the most part it should be the oral and the laryngopharynx that is a common way for both food and then air itself. All right, let's talk about the esophagus, and we're almost done for the goal for tonight. The esophagus is your food tube. All right, I know it has 4 layers of tissue, right? Mucosa, submucosa, muscularis externa, and the serosa, because everybody has those 4. But the mucosa layer is going to be then lined with non-keratinized, stratified squamous. And you should recognize that idea, I'm hoping, from 241 with histology slides, because you looked at that to look at non-keratinized stratified squamous. There are some more glands for mucus and for saliva-like stuff in the submucosal layer. But this now, the muscularis externa, is a little weird. All right? Go back to the normal template of 4 layers. Right? The normal template of the muscularis externa has 2 layers. Right? It has the circular and the longitudinal, both made of smooth muscle tissue. The esophagus is weird. The first third of your esophagus, yeah, it has these 2 layers, but it's made of skeletal muscle tissue. Why is that important? Because you guys control skeletal muscles. You don't control smooth. And think about it. Don't you decide when to swallow that cup of coffee or to swallow that bit of sandwich or a salad? Right? It's a voluntary thought process. So it has to be under skeletal muscle activity. The second third is a combination of both skeletal and smooth. So the first third is pure skeletal. Second third is skeletal and smooth. You see a pattern? What might the third portion be? Nothing but smooth. All right? Because you don't have to control. You got to get it started. That's why it's voluntary. And then we have to transition, because there's no point where it actually ends being skeletal and starts to be smooth. It's more of this idea, where it kind of just morphs and blends and becomes a little bit of smooth, and then becomes nothing but totally smooth. So if I make my hands the model, this is pure skeletal, so this is skeletal, this is pure smooth. So there's my overlap. So first third, second third, and nothing but pure smooth muscle at my stomach layer. It's a normal muscularis externa.
Was there ever a time in evolution where it was all smooth?
I would have to say yes. So who had the first mouth? That would be not peripheral, not cnidarians. That would have to, no, not flatworm, not platyhelminthes. That would have to be probably Nelida, roundworms, where they had probably some skeletal muscle tissue to begin with, period. So worms would be my first guess. I just said relative, really. You know. Okay. The last bit of your esophagus, ladies and gentlemen, is retroperitoneal. The last inch is retroperitoneal. So it's anchored so it doesn't flop and move all over the place in a sense. All right, here's a cross section just for you guys to realize that the esophagus is not a round hose. Right? It's a highly folded, convoluted tube. And the dark purple is the mucosa, the light purple is the submucosa, and there's your muscularis externa, the circular and longitudinal layers. It's very easy to see from the outside. You might recognize it more like this. Right up there. Remember, this is all epithelium. This is connective tissue, and there's the muscularis mucosa, the bottom layer of the mucosal layer. This will take some practice. Maybe you go, where the hell is that again? And you quickly go back to a slide that shows us the 4 layers really quickly. Where is one? Come on, back. There we go, right? Muscularis mucosa is the bottom part of my mucosa. Okay, that takes a little practice to do. But you can see with that layer of epithelium that it is non-keratinized, stratified squamose. Remember how to tell that it is non-keratinized? You look for the nuclei in the most apical layer of cells, right? That's how you can tell. I can see them. I mean, they're right there. So that's how I know it's non-keratinized. All right, stomach. That's our last goal for the night. We have regions and we have parts to the stomach. A lot of books talk about it as a J-shaped structure. And because of the J shape, I have 2 curves, or 2 major edges. This curve right here, and that curve right out there. Well, all right, let's compare the curves. This is a smaller curve. That's a bigger curve. What language do I have? How about lesser curvature? That is this edge of the stomach, because it's a short curve. This is a greater curvature, and that's where your greater omentum is found. This is where your lesser omentum was found. So there's the lesser and the greater curve. That's a physical edge. Then I have this part up here, which is a little hard to understand and to see, but I kind of think of it as the bottom part of my word anterior, come up and just circle the top. This part right here is my fundus. It's just a region right along in here. And then this part, coming along the front part of the word A for anterior and the S for surface, right in here, is going to be the cardia region, because it's close to your heart. So you have the cardia region, and I have the fundus up here. These are just regions. So if this is going to be the cardia, right along through here, and then this is going to be the fundus, then everything else, all through here and all down to here, right to that edge, all of this is the body of the stomach. It's the bulk of your stomach. And then we can see the outline, right, of what's known as the pylorus. Because we actually have 1, 2, 3, 4 major regions. That's why there's a blue box around major regions and why there's a blue box around those 4 things. Right, they are the 4 major regions of your stomach. This is an internal one, but it's also external, but it's just here. But my pylorus has an entrance to it, so it's called the pyloric antrum. It's the first part of your pylorus. And then it narrows, so I can get to my small intestine, and the narrowing is the pyloric canal. There's a sphincter right here. You remember sphincters from 241? Right? Circular bands of muscles. Remember the 3 capillary sphincters and a capillary bed? so you can alternate the path of blood through a capillary bed? Well, this normally stays really, really closed to keep the food in your stomach so you can begin to mechanically and chemically digest it. What they're not showing you up here is you need to realize there's another sphincter up here. Just like this one, but it's run along right through here. And it has one of two possible names. The esophageal sphincter makes complete sense because it's the sphincter that connects my esophagus to the cardia portion of my stomach. Other books call it the cardia sphincter because it's in the cardia region. But there is a sphincter here, and they're not letting you see that. Now, think about the template of 4 major layers. The common theme. Muscularis externa has 2 layers, right? Circular and longitudinal. They are smooth muscle tissue. The esophagus is weird because it has actually three different regions made of 2 different types of muscle tissue. But we still have only a circular and only a longitudinal layer. Now we're down to the stomach. It has a muscularis externa. It has a circular and longitudinal layer as well, made of smooth muscle tissue, but it has a unique 3rd layer, hence the red arrow. The oblique layer is unique to the stomach. Nobody else has one. And it runs at an angle, which is why it's called the oblique. It is the deepest of the 3 layers. So the underneath, right? Outside is longitudinal. Next layer down, right, is the circular, and right up here is where my obliques would be if I were to listen from the inside to the outside. So the oblique is closest to the food in your stomach. The longitudinal is the furthest layer from the food in your stomach. Now the epithelium is all simple columnar. Remember the esophagus was stratified squamous. But now we're at simple columnar. Because I don't want stratified tissue until I get to about my anus or my rectum. I want to be able to absorb things from here on out. So I can't have stratified layers. The function of the stomach, for the crash course until next week, is simply a storage bag. You don't do a lot of digesting in your stomach. You don't do a lot of absorbing. Some things you can absorb, like alcohol, and some medications can actually cross the mucus layer that we'll discuss next week. But mainly, it is not to digest, it's not actually to absorb nutrients. It's to hold it until we can make it into small little pieces so it can get to your intestines where you have the enzymes to break them down chemically. The goal of next week is to describe how this process works. And basically, the stuff in your stomach should look like pureed baby food by the time it leaves. That's going to be the goal of the stomach. In terms of the volume, think about 2 little pint containers from takeout restaurants. 2 little pint containers. That would be considered a good-sized meal for the average human being. Right? 2 pints of food. Now, this is a storage bag. There's one structure inside called the rugae, which are these folds that look like gyri of brain tissue. They are there to expand the stomach, like an accordion. Like the pleats you guys see in curtains, when you guys put more food in the stomach, it's like blowing up a balloon. And the extra stretch comes from stretching out or unfolding the rugae. This is nothing but a big muscular bag. Do you guys know where bagpipes came from in Scotland?
Sheep stuff.
Yeah, they use the stomach of a sheep. It's just a big muscular bag. You can seal off both ends and put air in and squeeze it and make noise out of it. But I want to press upon you how much you can put in there if you really needed to. Picture a basketball. How much bigger a basketball is, which would be, I guess, something, a basketball would be about like that. That's probably close, right? And then a pint container. That's a lot bigger than this is. In terms of size, because you may be able to picture or appreciate a basketball, I watched a guy last week intentionally. I tried to find a video of this guy. and he ate 15 pounds of food in less than an hour. That's a hell of a lot of food. All right? The reason I'm saying this is, evolutionarily, this was designed for you to store as much food as possible. Because you guys are spoiled right now. When was the last time you guys actually killed the meal you ate last? Probably none of you ever killed anything to eat, right? Right? When you're hungry, you go to the grocery store and you get food whenever you want it. But you go back 100,000 years ago, and you're traipsing across the plains looking for some place to live, you came across a bunch of berries, you sat down and stuffed yourself silly because who knows when you're going to eat next. Could be tomorrow, could be a week from now. So evolution gave us a really big suitcase that could stretch an awful lot. You guys know the hot dog eating contest?
Yeah.
All right. So what did the winner do? Do you remember?
30.
I want the guys, not the gals.
50s? No, 70s only. I don't know.
Yeah. 72 hot dogs and buns and about 2 liters of liquid in 10 minutes. Oh my God. The sodium load, the fat load, and whatever, right? But the idea is that it's the volume I want to press upon you, right? That's how much this thing can stretch, because it is nothing but 3 layers of muscle tissue. And the stretching comes because of the rugae, which is why you guys can eat a lot during Thanksgiving, which you normally don't do on the weekday. All right. Just a photograph of the stomach really quickly. You can kind of practice. There's your greater curvature. That's that greater omentum we mentioned, that apron of fat that we're going to see next week on kitty cats. Right? There's your lesser curvature. You can see where the pylorus would be and the body. And there's my fundus and my cardia. There's my esophagus and such. And we're done. Here's what you should do before you book out of here tonight. Right? We've got lots of different models for different parts. So take photographs of our stomach models. We got 2 of them. All right, over here and some over there. But the outside plus the inside. Right? If you have not yet looked at that list I sent you guys of the anatomy you need to